The early morning sun cast long shadows across the cemetery as May parked her old blue car near the entrance. She grabbed the bouquet of yellow daisies from the passenger seat and checked her watch. Just past 7. Perfect timing. The cemetery was always peaceful at this hour, before the groundskeepers started their noisy work. May pulled her light jacket closer as a cool breeze swept through the trees. At 42, she had developed a routine for these monthly visits to her mother's grave. 3 years had passed since the cancer took her mom, but the visits never got easier. Still, there was something calming about the quiet moments she spent here, talking to her mother as if she could hear every word. She walked slowly along the familiar path, nodding politely to an elderly man tending to a grave with fresh soil. The cemetery was unusually empty today, even for a Thursday morning. May preferred it this way. As a 5th-grade teacher at Pine Grove Elementary, she treasured these quiet moments before heading to a classroom full of energetic 10-year-olds. "Good morning, Mom," May said softly as she reached the simple headstone. She bent down to clear away the dried leaves and withered flowers from her last visit. "I brought your favorites today." May arranged the daisies in the small stone vase and sat down on the grass, not caring about the morning dew soaking through her jeans. She began telling her mother about the school play her students were rehearsing, about the leak in her kitchen that took 3 plumbers to fix, about the new recipe for dumplings she had tried that reminded her of home. "I wish you could have tasted them," she said, running her fingers over the engraved letters of her mother's name. "They weren't as good as yours, but I'm getting better." A sound interrupted her one-sided conversation, a soft sob coming from somewhere nearby. May looked up, scanning the area. At first she saw nothing unusual, just rows of headstones and monuments stretching across the well-kept grounds. Then she noticed movement behind a large marble tomb about 30 feet away. May hesitated. She wasn't the type to pry into other people's grief. Everyone deserved privacy in moments like these. But something about the sound made her pause. It seemed too high-pitched, too young. Another sob broke the silence, followed by what sounded like sniffling. May stood up slowly. "I'll be right back, Mom," she whispered, brushing grass from her jeans. May walked carefully toward the marble tomb, an impressive structure with carved angels and a small bench beside it. As she rounded the corner, she saw a small figure huddled on the ground, knees pulled up to chest, head bowed. It was a young girl, maybe 11 or 12 years old, wearing a navy blue school uniform with a crest May didn't recognize. Her dark hair was neatly braided, but strands had come loose around her tear-streaked face. In her lap was an open notebook, pages fluttering in the breeze. May stopped, uncertain. What was a child doing alone in a cemetery at this hour? Shouldn't she be heading to school? The girl hadn't noticed her yet, too caught up in her grief. May watched as she wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her uniform jacket, and then wrote something in the notebook with a pencil that looked chewed at the end. May cleared her throat gently. "Hello there." The girl's head snapped up, eyes wide with surprise. She quickly shut the notebook and scrambled to her feet, looking embarrassed and a little scared. "I'm sorry," May said softly, staying where she was to avoid frightening the child more. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I just heard. I wanted to make sure you were okay." The girl stared at her with red-rimmed eyes. She looked ready to run. "My name is May," she continued, her voice gentle. "I come here to visit my mom sometimes." The tension in the girl's shoulders eased slightly. She glanced down at the tomb beside her, then back at May. "I'm Lily," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not supposed to be here." May nodded, understanding. "You're supposed to be at school?" Lily shook her head. "No, it's a teacher workday. Dad thinks I'm at the library." She hugged the notebook to her chest. "Please don't tell anyone I was here." Something in the girl's pleading eyes tugged at May's heart. She had taught hundreds of children over her 15 years as a teacher, and she recognized the look of a child carrying a burden too heavy for young shoulders. "I won't tell," May promised. She glanced at the tomb. It was more elaborate than most in this cemetery, with fresh flowers in stone urns on either side. The name engraved on the marble read, Eleanor Grace Williams, with dates showing she had died 6 months ago at age 72. "Is this?" May began carefully. "My grandmother," Lily said. Her voice stronger now. She ran her fingers over the engraved name. "Everyone says I shouldn't come here so much, but..." Her voice trailed off. "But you miss her," May finished for her. Lily nodded, fresh tears welling in her eyes. Nobody understands. Dad works all the time, and when he's home, he doesn't want to talk about her. She held up the notebook. I write her letters. Tell her about my day, about things I remember. May's heart ached for the girl. She knew too well how grief could isolate a person, especially a child. I think that's a beautiful thing to do, May said. She took a step closer, moving slowly. May I sit down? Or would you prefer to be alone? Lily considered this for a moment, then shrugged. You can sit if you want. May settled on the stone bench, giving Lily plenty of space. The girl remained standing, fidgeting with the spiral binding of her notebook. My grandmother was a writer, Lily said suddenly. She wrote books. Real ones that people bought in stores? That's amazing, May said, genuinely impressed. What kind of books? Stories about people and their secrets. Lily's face brightened slightly. She was famous, kind of. She won awards and everything. Eleanor Williams, May repeated, the name suddenly clicking in her memory. Wait, did she write The Bridge Between? Lily's eyes widened. You read her books? May nodded enthusiastically. I loved The Bridge Between. I read it right after college. It was beautiful. A smile, the first one, tugged at Lily's lips. That was her favorite, too. She said it was the hardest to write. For several minutes, they talked about Eleanor's books. May could see the girl relaxing, coming alive as she shared memories of her grandmother, describing how Eleanor would read chapters to her, asking for her opinion on characters and plot twists. She said I had a good eye for stories, Lily said proudly. Before she got sick, she was teaching me how to write my own. Is that what you're doing now? May asked, nodding toward the notebook. Lily's smile faded. She looked down at her feet. Sort of. I write stories and pretend I'm reading them to her. Sometimes I feel like she's listening. I bet she is, May said gently. Lily looked at her skeptically. Do you really think dead people can hear us? Me thought about all the conversations she'd had at her mother's grave. I don't know for sure, she answered honestly, but I like to believe they can. And even if they can't, talking to them helps us remember how much they loved us. Lily seemed to consider this. Then, to May's surprise, she held out the notebook. Do you want to see what I wrote today? May took the notebook carefully, honored by the trust this simple gesture represented. The page was filled with neat handwriting, a story about a fox who lived in a city park and made friends with a lonely little girl. This is really good, Lily, May said, after reading the first paragraph. You have a wonderful imagination. My grandmother said imagination is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Lily sat down on the bench beside May, suddenly looking very tired. I come here every Thursday morning. Dad has early meetings, so he doesn't notice I'm gone. May frowned slightly. Does your dad know how much you miss her? Lily shrugged. He misses her too, I think. But differently. They used to argue a lot, and now... She trailed off, looking at the tomb. Now our house is so quiet all the time. That must be hard, May said. She hesitated, then added, I know we just met, but if you ever want to talk about your grandmother or your stories, I'm a good listener. Lily studied her face, as if trying to decide whether to trust this stranger who had interrupted her private grief. Why would you want to do that? The question was direct, without the filter adults often used. May appreciated the honesty. Because when my mother died, I felt very alone, she answered truthfully. And sometimes all we need is someone who will listen without trying to fix everything. Lily nodded slowly, understanding beyond her years in her eyes. She looked at her watch, a grown-up timepiece that must have belonged to someone else. I should go, she said reluctantly. The library opens at 9, and I told Dad I'd be home by lunch. As they both stood, May had a sudden idea. I come here on the first Thursday of every month around this same time. If you ever want company... She left the offer hanging, not wanting to pressure the girl. Lily tucked her notebook into a small backpack and zipped it carefully. Maybe, she said, not committing. But as she turned to leave, she added, It was nice meeting you, Ms. May. Just May is fine, she replied with a smile. It was nice meeting you too, Lily. May watched as the girl walked away, her small figure gradually disappearing among the tombstones. Something about their encounter felt significant, though she couldn't explain why. She returned to her mother's grave, thinking about Lily and her famous grandmother and the stories that connected them even after death. You'd like her, Mom? May said quietly as she gathered her things to leave. She reminds me a little of myself at that age, As May drove away from the cemetery, she found herself hoping that next month, on the first Thursday, a young girl with a notebook might be waiting by a marble tomb, ready to share more stories. 4 weeks passed before May returned to the cemetery. A stomach bug had swept through her classroom, and she'd been one of its unlucky victims. By the time she recovered, she had missed her regular Thursday visit. She wondered if Lily had come back to the marble tomb, if the girl had noticed her absence. The morning was cooler than last time, with gray clouds threatening rain. May parked in her usual spot and grabbed the fresh flowers, white lilies this time, along with a small paper bag. She hadn't planned to bring anything for Lily, unsure if the girl would even be there, but at the last minute she had tucked a book of short stories into the bag. It was one she often recommended to her more advanced students, stories about courage and friendship written in simple, beautiful language. As May approached her mother's grave, she felt the familiar tightness in her chest. No matter how many times she visited, the sight of her mother's name carved in stone never got easier. "Sorry I'm late, Mom," she said, kneeling to arrange the flowers. "School's been crazy. We're doing the science fair next week, and you know how that goes. 28 kids with 28 projects, and half of them leave everything to the last minute." She smiled, imagining her mother's laugh. They had been so close, just the two of them, after May's father left when she was only 6. Her mother had worked 2 jobs to give May a good life, to send her to college. Even now, May often found herself wanting to pick up the phone to share news or ask advice, forgetting for a split second that she no longer could. After spending a few quiet moments at the grave, May stood up and glanced toward Eleanor Williams' tomb. Her heart jumped when she spotted a small figure sitting on the stone bench, head bent over what looked like the same notebook. Lily was back. May hesitated, not wanting to intrude. Maybe their first meeting had been a one-time thing. Maybe Lily preferred to be alone with her memories. But even as these thoughts crossed her mind, Lily looked up and saw her. The girl's face brightened with recognition, and she raised her hand in a shy wave. That was enough invitation for May. She picked up her bag and walked over. "I thought you might not come back," Lily said as May approached. Today she wore jeans and a purple sweater that looked a size too big, probably a hand-me-down. "I got sick," May explained, sitting down beside her. "Some bug that's been going around school. Trust me, 5th graders are like little germ factories." This earned a small smile from Lily. "You're a teacher?" May nodded. "5th grade, Pine Grove Elementary. That's on the other side of town from my school," Lily said. She fidgeted with her pencil. "I was here last Thursday. I thought maybe you forgot." The words were casual, but May heard the hint of disappointment behind them. "I'm sorry I missed you. I would have come if I could." Lily shrugged, but May could tell her answer mattered. She realized with a pang that the girl had been looking forward to seeing her again. "How have you been?" May asked. "How's school going?" "It's okay." Lily's voice was non-committal. "We had a math test. I got an A-. That's great. My dad said it should have been an A." Lily said this matter-of-factly without self-pity, which somehow made it worse. May frowned slightly. "An A- is something to be proud of. Math isn't easy. Dad says I need perfect grades to get into a good college. He wants me to be a doctor or a lawyer." Lily looked down at her notebook. Grandma was the only one who thought writing was important. The conversation was heading into complicated territory. May knew better than to criticize a parent she'd never met. "Sometimes grown-ups have different ideas about what's best for kids," she said carefully. "They want you to be successful. But what if what makes me successful isn't what makes me happy?" Lily asked, suddenly looking older than her years. May blinked, surprised by the depth of the question. "That's something many adults still struggle with," she admitted. "Including me sometimes." Lily seemed to consider this. "Were you always a teacher?" "No," May laughed. "I tried a lot of things first. I worked in an office, then at a bookstore. I even tried being a personal assistant to a very demanding businessman. That lasted exactly 3 weeks. What made you decide to be a teacher?" "My mom got sick the first time," May said, memories washing over her. "I moved back home to help take care of her. The elementary school needed a substitute teacher, and I took the job just to pay bills. But then I discovered I loved it. The kids, their curiosity, watching them learn new things. It felt right. When my mom got better, I went back to school to get my teaching degree." Lily nodded, as if this made perfect sense to her. That's how Grandma said it feels when you find the right story to write. Like pieces clicking into place. Exactly, May smiled. Speaking of stories. She reached into her bag and pulled out the book. I brought this for you, if you want it. Lily took the book, examining the cover with its simple illustration of a fox under a starry sky. For me? It reminded me of your fox story, May explained. These are all short stories about animals and the people who connect with them. They're some of my favorites. Lily ran her fingers over the cover, then opened to the first page. Thank you, she whispered. She looked up at May with serious eyes. No one's given me a book since Grandma died. The simple statement hit May like a physical pain. She thought of her own childhood home, shelves overflowing with books her mother had bought or borrowed for her. Would you like to read some of your new story? May asked, nodding toward the notebook. The one about the fox? Lily hesitated, then nodded. She opened her notebook and began to read aloud, her voice soft at first, then growing stronger as she gained confidence. The story had developed since May had last seen it. The fox now had a name, Rusty, and the lonely girl was teaching him to trust humans again after a bad experience. As she listened, May was struck by the quality of the writing. Yes, there were the expected mistakes of a young writer, some repetition, a few awkward transitions, but underneath was real talent. The characters felt alive, their emotions authentic. This wasn't just a good story for a 12-year-old. It was a good story, period. When Lily finished reading, she looked up nervously. What do you think? Is it stupid? Lily, it's wonderful, May said honestly. You have a real gift. The girl's face flushed with pleasure. Really? You're not just saying that because you're nice? I'm a teacher, May reminded her with a grin. We're honest about these things. Your grandmother was right about your talent. They spent the next hour talking about Lily's story, with May offering gentle suggestions about pacing and description. Lily soaked up the advice eagerly, making notes in the margins of her notebook. As they talked, May learned more about Lily's life, how she lived in a small apartment with her father, how he worked long hours as an accountant, how there were frozen dinners and empty weekends and a house rule against moping. Dad says we have to move forward, Lily explained. He packed up all of Grandma's things from our guest room. He says we can't live in the past. That must be hard for you, May said carefully. Lily nodded, her eyes growing distant. Sometimes I sneak into the storage closet where he put her boxes. I just want to look at her things, you know? Her favorite scarf, her reading glasses. It helps me remember her voice. Before May could respond, a fat raindrop landed on the notebook page, followed quickly by another. The threatening clouds had made good on their promise. Oh no! Lily quickly closed her notebook and slipped it into her backpack along with the new book. I should get home before it really starts pouring. May stood up, already feeling the rain picking up. Do you live far? Can I give you a ride? Lily shook her head. Dad says never to get in cars with people I don't know well. That's smart advice, May agreed, though she felt a pang at being considered a stranger. But how will you get home? I ride my bike, Lily said, pointing to a small blue bicycle leaning against a tree nearby. It's not far, just a few blocks. May frowned at the increasingly heavy raindrops. At least take this, she said, pulling a compact umbrella from her bag. You can return it next time. Lily took the umbrella gratefully. Next Thursday? I'll be here, May promised. As Lily pedaled away, huddled under the umbrella, May hurried back to her car. She sat for a moment, listening to the rain drum on the roof, thinking about the girl and her stories and the grandmother who had encouraged her talent. There was something special about Lily, something that went beyond her writing ability, a wisdom and sensitivity unusual in someone so young. May found herself looking forward to their next meeting, curious to see how Rusty the Fox's story would develop. On her drive to school, May couldn't help but wonder about Lily's father. What kind of man packed away all traces of his mother so quickly, who expected perfect grades but didn't notice his daughter sneaking off to a cemetery every week? She reminded herself not to judge. Grief affected people differently, and single parenting wasn't easy. Still, she worried about Lily and the weight of loss the girl carried. I think I was meant to find her, Mom, May said aloud as if her mother could hear her from the passenger seat. I'm not sure why yet, but it feels important. The rain eased as she pulled into the school parking lot. May gathered her teaching materials, her mind still half occupied with foxes and marble tombs, and a talented young girl who needed someone to listen. She made a mental note to bring more books next Thursday, ones that might inspire new stories for Lily to write. Sometimes the most meaningful connections came from the most unexpected places, May thought as she greeted her students. Like a chance meeting in a quiet cemetery on an ordinary morning, their Thursday meetings became a steady rhythm over the next 2 months. Rain or shine, May would arrive at the cemetery with flowers for her mother and books or writing tips for Lily. The girl would be waiting at her grandmother's tomb, sometimes writing, sometimes just sitting quietly with her thoughts. Today marked their 9th meeting, and something was different. When May arrived, Lily was pacing in front of the marble tomb, her face tight with worry. She spotted May and rushed over before she could even reach her mother's grave. "You're here," Lily said, relief washing over her features. "I wasn't sure if you'd come today." "Of course I came," May said, concerned by the girl's agitation. "What's wrong, Lily?" Lily bit her lip, twisting the strap of her backpack between her fingers. "Dad found your umbrella in my room." He asked where I got it. May's stomach dropped. She hadn't considered how their meetings might look to an outsider, a grown woman secretly meeting someone else's child. Of course, Lily's father would be concerned. "What did you tell him?" she asked carefully. "I said a teacher at school let me borrow it when it rained." Lily looked down at her sneakers. "I lied to him." "I never lie to Dad." The guilt in her voice was palpable. May set her bag down on the bench and took a deep breath. "Maybe it's time we talk to your dad," she suggested gently. "Tell him about our meetings." Lily's head snapped up, panic in her eyes. "No, he'll be mad I've been coming here instead of going to the library. He'll make me stop." "You don't know that," May said, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. "He might understand if we explain." "He won't." Lily's voice was flat with certainty. "He doesn't understand anything about Grandma or my writing or—" She trailed off, blinking back tears. May sat down on the bench and patted the spot beside her. Lily dropped her backpack and sat, shoulders slumped in defeat. "Tell me more about your dad," May said. After all these weeks, she still knew very little about the man beyond Lily's brief mentions. Lily sighed. "His name is Thomas. He works at a big accounting firm downtown. He's good at math and bad at talking about feelings." She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "He wasn't always like this. Before Grandma got sick, he used to laugh more. We'd all watch movies together on Fridays and get pizza. And now he works late almost every night. When he is home, he's on his computer or talking on the phone about work stuff." Lily kicked at a pebble near her foot. "Last week was my birthday."
He forgot until his secretary called to remind him.
"Then he ordered a cake and gave me money to buy something online." May felt a familiar ache for this child who seemed so alone in her grief. "He's hurting too, in his own way," she said softly. "I know," Lily admitted. "Sometimes I hear him in his room at night. The walls are thin." She looked up at May, her eyes suddenly years older than her face. "Adults think kids don't notice stuff, but we do. We notice everything." The simple truth of this statement hit May hard. How many of her own students were carrying burdens she knew nothing about? "Well," May said, trying to lighten the mood, "let's focus on something happier. Did you finish the story about Rusty the Fox?" Lily's face brightened instantly. "I did, and I started a new one." She dug into her backpack and pulled out her notebook, now accompanied by a second one with a blue cover. This one's about a lighthouse keeper who finds a message in a bottle. For the next hour, they talked about Lily's stories. May was continually amazed by the girl's imagination and growing skill. With each week, her writing became more confident, her characters more complex. It was like watching a flower bloom in fast motion. "I've been thinking," May said as Lily finished reading a particularly moving passage. "There's a young writer's workshop at the library next month. Kids your age, sharing stories, getting feedback. Would you be interested?" Lily's eyes widened. "A real workshop? With other writers?" "A published author runs it, someone who writes books for young people." May smiled at Lily's excitement. "I think you're ready to share your work with more people than just me. Do you think they'd like my stories?" Uncertainty crept into Lily's voice. "I know they would," May assured her. "You have a special gift, Lily. Your grandmother saw it, and I see it too." At the mention of Eleanor, Lily grew quiet. She traced her fingers over the marble tomb beside them. "I miss her so much," she whispered. "Sometimes I dream she's still here, and then I wake up and have to remember all over again that she's gone." May nodded, understanding too well. That happens to me with my mom, too. Grief isn't a straight line. It circles back when you least expect it. Dad says I should be moving on by now. Lily hugged her notebook to her chest. He packed up more of her things last weekend. Said we needed to clear the energy in the apartment. May frowned. Everyone grieves differently, and there's no timeline for when you should get over losing someone you love. That's what Grandma would say. Lily smiled sadly. I wish you could have met her. You would have liked each other. I'm sure we would have, May agreed. From everything you've told me, she sounds like an amazing woman. She was. Lily's voice grew stronger. She taught me that stories matter, that they help us make sense of the world. She opened her notebook again, flipping to the back where a photo was tucked between the pages. This is her. May took the photo carefully. It showed an elegant older woman with silver-streaked dark hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She was sitting in what looked like a study, bookshelves lining the walls behind her, a typewriter on the desk beside her. Despite her age, there was something vibrant about her, a spark that came through even in the still image. She's beautiful, May said, handing the photo back. You have her eyes. Lily smiled, pleased by the comparison. Dad doesn't like when I talk about her too much. He says it keeps the wound open. But Grandma always said that talking about people we've lost keeps them alive in a way. I think your grandmother was very wise, May said. She hesitated, then added, You know, I have some of her books at home. I told you I read The Bridge Between, but I also have Silence in Summer and The Glass Hour. You do? Lily's face lit up. Those were her last two books before, she swallowed hard, before she got too sick to write anymore. They're beautiful stories, May said. I'd be happy to lend them to you if you'd like to read them. I'd love that, Lily whispered. Dad packed her copies away. I haven't been able to find them. May made a mental note to bring the books next week. Actually, I was wondering, did your grandmother leave any unfinished work? Many writers have manuscripts in progress when they pass away. The question seemed to startle Lily. She looked down at her hands, suddenly quiet. Lily, me prompted gently. I'm sorry if that upset you. No, it's just... Lily took a deep breath. There is something. A manuscript she was working on before she got sick. Dad doesn't know I found it. Now it was May's turn to be surprised. You found an unpublished manuscript? Lily nodded. It was in a box in our storage closet. I was looking for her old sweater, the soft blue one she used to wear when she read to me. I found a folder with printed pages and handwritten notes. Have you read it? May asked, curious despite herself. Some of it, Lily admitted. It's different from her other books. More personal, I think. Like she was writing about real things that happened, but as a story. She looked up at May, a strange expression crossing her face. It's about a woman looking for her daughter. Her daughter? May repeated, confused. But I thought your grandmother only had one child, your father. That's what I thought too. Lily's voice dropped to a near whisper. But in the story, the woman gave up a baby girl for adoption when she was young. The story is about her trying to find her daughter years later. May felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn breeze. It could just be fiction, she said carefully. Writers often explore themes that aren't from their own lives. Maybe. Lily didn't sound convinced. But there are dates and places that match real things. And old newspaper clippings paperclipped to some pages. She chewed her lip thoughtfully. I think Grandma might have had a secret. The cemetery groundskeeper appeared in the distance, pushing a wheelbarrow of tools. May checked her watch and realized with a start that she needed to get to school soon. I have to go, she said reluctantly. But Lily, this is fascinating. Would you consider bringing some pages next week? I'd love to read what your grandmother was working on. Lily hesitated, then nodded. I think she would have wanted someone to read it. Someone who understands stories the way you do. As they gathered their things, May couldn't shake a strange feeling that had settled over her. There was something about Eleanor Williams that called to her. Something beyond the books she had enjoyed years ago. Next Thursday, then, May said as they walked toward the cemetery entrance. And don't worry about your father. If he asks about the umbrella again, tell him the truth. That you met a teacher who also visits a loved one here. You don't have to mention that we meet regularly. Lily nodded, seemingly relieved at this compromise. I'll try to bring some of Grandma's manuscript. You'll have to tell me what you think it means. They parted ways at the gate, Lily heading toward her bike, May to her car. As May drove to school, her mind kept returning to the photograph of Eleanor Williams with her typewriter and books. There was something oddly familiar about her face, though May was certain they had never met. "What was your secret, Eleanor?" May murmured to herself as she pulled into the school parking lot. She found herself looking forward to next Thursday with an anticipation that went beyond her usual pleasure at seeing Lily. Sometimes stories were more than just stories. Sometimes they were windows into truths that had been hidden away, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. May couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor's manuscript all week. Her mind kept circling back to what Lily had said, a story about a woman searching for a daughter she had given up for adoption. Was it fiction or something more personal? The question followed her through her days, distracting her during staff meetings and while grading papers. By the time Thursday arrived, May was practically buzzing with anticipation. She arrived at the cemetery earlier than usual, placing flowers at her mother's grave before heading straight to Eleanor's tomb. But the stone bench was empty. No sign of Lily. May checked her watch. It was only a few minutes past their usual meeting time. She sat down to wait, opening the tote bag she'd brought. Inside were the 2 Eleanor Williams novels she'd promised to lend Lily, along with a notebook filled with writing prompts she'd created for her young friend. 10 minutes passed, then 20. May began to worry. In all their meetings, Lily had never been late. The girl was remarkably punctual, always waiting when May arrived. She pulled out her phone, then realized with a sinking feeling that she had no way to contact Lily. Despite weeks of meetings, they had never exchanged phone numbers or addresses. Their connection existed only here in this quiet corner of the cemetery. After 45 minutes, May reluctantly gathered her things. She had to get to school and Lily clearly wasn't coming. Had something happened? Was she sick? Or had her father somehow discovered their meetings and put a stop to them? The day dragged by, May's concern growing with each passing hour. Her students noticed her distraction, one of them asking if she was feeling okay. She managed to smile and refocused on the lesson, but her thoughts kept drifting to Lily. After school, May sat in her car debating what to do. She could wait until next Thursday and hope Lily would return. But what if something was wrong? The thought of Lily in trouble, or simply believing May had abandoned their friendship, was unbearable. Then she remembered something Lily had mentioned during one of their conversations. Her father worked at a large accounting firm downtown. What was his name? Thomas, Lily had said. Thomas, with a last name that would be the same as Eleanor Williams' married name. May pulled out her phone and searched for accounting firms in the downtown area. There were several, but only 3 that could be considered large. She searched each firm's website for staff directories, looking for anyone named Thomas Williams. The second website listed him, Thomas Williams, Senior Tax Manager. There was even a small photo, a serious-looking man with the same dark eyes as Lily. May jotted down the firm's address, her heart racing. This was crazy, right? She couldn't just show up at a stranger's workplace. What would she even say? Yet 20 minutes later, she found herself parking in the visitors section of a gleaming office tower downtown. The lobby directory confirmed that the accounting firm occupied floors 14 through 16. May took a deep breath and stepped into the elevator. The firm's reception area was sleek and modern, all glass and polished wood. A young woman behind the desk looked up as May approached. "Can I help you?" she asked pleasantly. "I hope so," May said, suddenly aware of how strange her request might sound. "I'm looking for Thomas Williams." She hesitated. What was she? A friend of his daughter's? A concerned teacher? "I'm a friend of his family," she finished lamely. "Do you have an appointment?" The receptionist asked. "No, I don't, but it's important." The woman looked skeptical but picked up her phone. "Your name?" "Mei Chen." After a brief conversation, the receptionist hung up and nodded toward a seating area. "Mr. Williams can see you for a few minutes. He's in a meeting that's wrapping up now." May sat, her hands fidgeting in her lap. What if Thomas was angry? What if coming here made things worse for Lily? Before she could reconsider, a door opened and a man stepped out. He was taller than he'd looked in his website photo, with Lily's straight dark hair and serious expression. "Ms. Chen," he said, extending his hand. "Thomas Williams. My assistant says you're a friend of the family." May stood and shook his hand. "Yes, well, sort of. I'm actually a friend of Lily's." His expression shifted instantly, confusion and suspicion replacing professional politeness. You know my daughter? How? It's a bit of a long story, May said.
Is there somewhere we could talk privately?
Thomas hesitated, then nodded toward his office. We can talk in here. The office was neat and impersonal, with framed professional certificates but no family photos. Thomas closed the door and gestured for May to sit. Now, how do you know Lily? He asked, remaining standing. Are you from her school? No. May took a deep breath. I'm a teacher, but at Pine Grove Elementary across town. I met Lily at Peaceful Garden Cemetery about 2 months ago. Thomas's face darkened. The cemetery? What are you talking about? Lily has been visiting her grandmother's grave, May explained gently. Every Thursday morning. That's where I met her. I visit my mother's grave nearby. Thomas sat down heavily in his chair. Thursday mornings, he repeated. When she's supposed to be at the library. She's been going to the cemetery instead, May confirmed. We started talking, and over the weeks we've become friends. She's an amazing girl, Mr. Williams. So bright and creative. You've been meeting my 12-year-old daughter in a cemetery without my knowledge. His voice was tight with controlled anger. Do you realize how inappropriate that sounds? May winced. I understand how it looks. I should have encouraged Lily to tell you about our meetings, but she was afraid you'd be upset about her visiting the cemetery. Of course I'd be upset. Thomas's voice rose slightly. She's been lying to me for months, and a stranger has been encouraging it. I wasn't encouraging her to lie, May countered. But I could see how much she needed someone to talk to about her grandmother. About her writing. At the mention of writing, Thomas's expression changed again. She's been showing you her stories? May nodded. She's incredibly talented. Your mother was teaching her to write before she passed away, and Lily's been continuing on her own. Thomas rubbed his temples. My mother and her stories, he muttered. Always filling Lily's head with fantasies. They're not just fantasies, May said, surprising herself with her firmness. Lily has a real gift. She processes her feelings through her writing. It's helping her cope with her grief. And you're an expert on my daughter's grief now? Thomas asked sharply. No, May said, keeping her voice calm. But I do know what it's like to lose someone you love. My mother died 3 years ago. That's why I was at the cemetery in the first place. Some of the tension left Thomas's shoulders. I'm sorry about your mother, he said, his tone softening slightly. But you have to understand how this looks from my perspective. A stranger befriending my daughter in secret? I do understand, May assured him. I'm here because Lily didn't show up at the cemetery today. I was worried something might have happened to her. She has a cold, Thomas said. She stayed home from school. He eyed May with renewed suspicion. How did you find me? Lily mentioned you work at a large accounting firm downtown. I looked up firms until I found your name. May smiled sheepishly. I'm not usually so detective-like. I was just concerned. Thomas was quiet for a moment, studying her. You care about her, he said finally. It wasn't a question. I do, May admitted. She's special, and she misses her grandmother terribly. Thomas sighed, the professional mask slipping to reveal a tired, grieving man. My mother and Lily were inseparable. 2 peas in a pod, always with their heads in books or scribbling stories. He ran a hand through his hair. When Mom got sick, it was like watching 2 people suffer instead of one. And after she died, he trailed off. It's been hard for both of you, May said gently. Lily withdrew into herself. Into those stories my mother encouraged. There was an edge to his voice. I've been trying to get her to move forward, to focus on school, on things that will secure her future. The stories are part of how she's processing her grief, May explained. They're her connection to her grandmother. Thomas leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking exhausted. Lily mentioned she met someone at the cemetery, a teacher. I should have realized she wasn't talking about a one-time encounter. I brought her books, May said. We talked about writing. I listened when she shared memories of her grandmother. She hesitated, then added, she mentioned finding an unfinished manuscript your mother was working on before she died. Thomas went very still. What manuscript? She said it was in a box in your storage closet. A story about a woman searching for her daughter. The color drained from Thomas's face. She found that? His voice was barely audible. She's read parts of it, May confirmed. She was going to bring some pages to show me today. Thomas stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to May. For a long moment, he said nothing. Mr. Williams? May prompted gently. Is everything okay? No, he said, still facing away. Everything is not okay. He turned back to her, his expression conflicted. That manuscript wasn't fiction. My mother was searching for a child she gave up for adoption before I was born. Even though Lily had suggested as much, hearing it confirmed sent a shock through May. So she had another child? Thomas nodded slowly. A daughter. She was 19, unmarried. This was in the 1970s. Things were different then. Her parents forced her to give the baby up. He sighed heavily. She never told me until she got sick. Said she'd been searching for her daughter for years without success. That must have been difficult to learn, May said. It was complicated. Thomas returned to his desk. I'd always been her only child. Suddenly there was this ghost of a sister I never knew I had. He picked up a pen, turning it absently in his fingers. Mom became obsessed with finding her as her health declined. She hired a private investigator, spent hours online searching adoption records. Did she ever find her? May asked, strangely invested in the answer. No, Thomas said flatly. The investigator found some leads, but nothing conclusive. Mom was still searching when she died. He set the pen down with finality. And then I had to pick up the pieces of a 12-year-old girl who'd lost her best friend, who couldn't understand why her grandmother was gone. The raw pain in his voice touched May deeply. You've been carrying a lot, she said softly. Thomas looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Why do you care so much about my daughter, Ms. Chen? Why get involved in our lives? May considered the question carefully. I recognized something in Lily that first day, a grief that mirrored my own. And then I discovered her talent, her love of stories. She smiled slightly. Sometimes people come into our lives at exactly the right moment, even if we meet them in unusual places. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for a notepad and wrote something down. This is our address and my phone number, he said, tearing off the page and handing it to her. If you'd like to continue your friendship with Lily, you can do it properly. With my knowledge and in our home. May took the paper, surprised and touched by the gesture. Thank you. That means a lot. Lily needs more people in her corner, Thomas admitted. I've been trying to protect her by moving forward, but maybe that's not what she needs right now. She just needs to know it's okay to remember, May said gently, that her grandmother isn't truly gone as long as she keeps her stories alive. As May left the office building, she felt a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. She had found Lily, ensured she was okay, and somehow, against all odds, she had gained Thomas's trust, or at least the beginning of it. Yet Eleanor's manuscript lingered in her thoughts. A woman searching for a daughter she had given up decades ago, a search that had remained unfinished when she died. May couldn't explain why, but she felt drawn to this mystery, this untold story of a mother and child separated by time and circumstance. As she drove home, she found herself wondering about the woman Eleanor had been searching for, where she was now, whether she knew about the mother who had never stopped looking for her. Little did she know. The answer was closer than anyone could have imagined. 3 days later, May stood outside an apartment door, a tote bag of books in one hand and a small pot of violets in the other. She took a deep breath and knocked. The door swung open to reveal Lily, her face lighting up at the sight of May. You came, she exclaimed, then turned to call over her shoulder. Dad, Ms. May is here. Thomas appeared behind his daughter, looking more relaxed than he had in his office. He wore jeans and a faded sweatshirt, so different from the crisp suit of their first meeting. Ms. Chen, he greeted her with a small nod. Please come in. May stepped into a modest apartment that showed signs of once careful decoration, now giving way to bachelor-father practicality. The living room furniture was good quality, but slightly worn. Bookshelves lined one wall and a few framed photographs were scattered about. But there were also stacks of mail on the coffee table, a forgotten coffee mug on a side table, and an overall feeling of a home being maintained rather than truly lived in. These are for you, May said, handing the violets to Lily. Purple for creativity and imagination. They're beautiful, Lily said, cradling the pot. I'll put them in my room by the window. And I brought those books of your grandmother's, I promised, May added, pulling them from her tote bag. Plus a few others I thought you might enjoy. As Lily excitedly examined the books, Thomas gestured toward the kitchen. Coffee or tea? Tea would be lovely, thank you, May replied, following him while Lily settled on the couch with her new treasures. The kitchen was small but functional. With a round table tucked into a corner beneath a window, Thomas filled a kettle and set it on the stove. Thank you for inviting me, May said, breaking the slightly awkward silence. Thomas nodded, taking mugs from a cabinet. Lily hasn't stopped talking about you since I told her you visited my office. I think she was afraid she'd never see you again. I was worried about her when she didn't show up on Thursday, May admitted. She's feeling better now, just a 24-hour bug. Thomas leaned against the counter, studying May with that same intense gaze Lily sometimes had. I've been thinking about our conversation. About my mother's manuscript. Did you know she was writing about her search? May asked. Thomas shook his head. I knew she was working on something new before she got sick, but she was private about her writing until she was ready to share it. He paused as the kettle began to whistle. After she died, I packed everything away. It was too painful to sort through it all. He poured hot water into the mugs and handed one to May. Lily says you want to read the manuscript. If that's okay with you, May said carefully. I understand it's personal. Thomas was quiet for a moment, stirring his tea. My mother would have wanted someone to read it. Someone who cares about stories the way she did. He smiled faintly, the way Lily does. They carried their tea back to the living room, where Lily had created a stack of books beside her on the couch. Ms. May, she said excitedly, Dad says I can show you Grandma's manuscript. If you'd like to, May replied, glancing at Thomas for confirmation. He nodded. It's in the storage closet. I'll get it. While Thomas disappeared down a hallway, Lily leaned closer to May. Are you still going to meet me at the cemetery? She whispered. We don't need to sneak around anymore, May said gently. We can meet here or at the library or yes, sometimes at the cemetery if your dad agrees. He said he'd take me there this weekend, Lily said, sounding surprised by this development. He hasn't visited Grandma's grave since the funeral. Thomas returned carrying a cardboard file box. He set it on the coffee table and lifted the lid, revealing folders full of papers, notebooks, and what looked like research materials. This is everything related to the manuscript, he explained. Her drafts, notes, research, correspondence with the private investigator. He pulled out a thick folder labeled The Searching Heart in elegant handwriting. This is the most complete version of what she was writing. May took the folder, feeling a strange reverence. This was Eleanor Williams' last work, never read by anyone outside her family until now. Why don't you two look through this while I make dinner? Thomas suggested. Lily, you can show Ms. Chen your room afterward if you'd like. As he disappeared back into the kitchen, Lily scooted closer to May on the couch. It's weird seeing Dad like this, she whispered. He's been different since you talked to him. Different how? May asked, opening the folder. More present. Lily considered her words carefully, like he's actually seeing me again. Inside the folder were neatly typed pages with handwritten notes in the margins. May began to read, with Lily peering over her shoulder. The manuscript opened with a young woman in 1972 discovering she was pregnant. The writing was intimate and raw, clearly drawing from Eleanor's own experience. As they read, May found herself deeply moved by the story of a 19-year-old girl forced by family pressure to give up her baby. A little girl born in spring who she was allowed to hold, only once before the adoption agency took her away. I never knew any of this, Lily said softly as they turned pages. Grandma never talked about having another baby before Dad. The story followed the woman, called Elizabeth in the manuscript, though clearly a stand-in for Eleanor, through the decades that followed. Her marriage years later to a kind man, the birth of her son, her career as a writer. But always, there was the shadow of the daughter she had lost, the child whose face she strained to imagine as the years passed. Look at this, May said, pulling out a newspaper clipping attached to one page. It was a birth announcement from a San Francisco hospital, dated April 16, 1972. A baby girl, 7 pounds 3 ounces, born to Eleanor Grace Patterson, Eleanor's maiden name. Me realized. That's my half-aunt, Lily said wonderingly. Dad's sister he never knew. As they continued reading, the manuscript shifted to the woman's search for her child, beginning in the early 2000s when adoption records became more accessible. There were dead ends, false hopes, private investigators who took her money but found nothing. Then, Tucked between 2 pages was a photograph. A young woman with dark hair, standing in front of a university building. The picture was grainy, as if taken from a distance or enlarged from a group photo. The investigator found her, May whispered, reading the notes scribbled on the back of the photo. San Francisco State University Education Department, 2005. Something cold washed through May. She stared at the photo, her hand suddenly trembling. "What's wrong?" Lily asked, noticing her reaction. May could barely speak. "This building, I know it. I went to San Francisco State. I studied education there, graduated in 2005. Lily's eyes widened. "But that would mean..." May carefully set the photo down and dug into her purse, pulling out her wallet. From it, she extracted a small, worn photograph and placed it next to Eleanor's picture. It showed a young woman with dark hair standing in front of the same university building, wearing a graduation cap and gown. "That's me," May whispered. "My graduation day," Lily gasped. "You're her. You're the daughter Grandma was looking for." May's mind raced. It couldn't be coincidence. The date of birth, April 16, 1972, matched her own. She had always known she was adopted, raised by a loving single mother who had never hidden the truth from her. But her adoption records had been sealed, the identity of her birth mother unknown. "Dad!" Lily called, her voice cracking with emotion. "Dad, come here." Thomas hurried in from the kitchen, alarmed by his daughter's tone. "What's wrong?" "Look," Lily said, pointing to the photos side by side. "It's Ms. May. She's Grandma's daughter." Thomas stared at the pictures, then at May, his face draining of color. "That's not possible," he whispered, but his eyes said he knew it was. "I was born on April 16, 1972 in San Francisco," May said, her voice shaking. "I was adopted by Lin Chen when I was 2 days old. I never knew who my birth mother was." Thomas sank into a chair, still staring at May. "Your eyes," he said faintly. "They're my mother's eyes. How did I not see it before?" "The private investigator," May said, looking back at the manuscript. "He found me, but Eleanor, your mother, never knew for certain. The trail went cold. She died still searching," Thomas said, his voice hollow with disbelief. "But she did find you," Lily whispered, looking at May with wonder, just not in the way she expected. "I don't understand," Thomas said, shaking his head. "Of all the cemeteries, all the places you could have been that day, I was visiting my mother," May explained softly. "My adoptive mother, who passed away 3 years ago." "And you met Lily at my mother's tomb," Thomas finished, the incredible coincidence of it all finally sinking in. "My mother's granddaughter led you to her." The three of them sat in stunned silence, the manuscript pages scattered around them like puzzle pieces finally fitted together. "She used to talk about threads that connect people," Lily said after a long moment. "Grandma said that some people are meant to find each other no matter what." Thomas looked at May, really looked at her. "You have her talent with words, too. Lily said you're the only adult who really understands her stories." "I always felt something missing," May admitted. "Some piece of myself I couldn't quite grasp." She touched the manuscript pages gently. "All these years she was looking for me and I never knew." "And now you're here," Lily said, her eyes bright. "You found us instead. Or we found each other," May corrected softly. They talked for hours that evening. Dinner forgotten as Thomas brought out photo albums and shared stories of Eleanor that filled in the missing pieces of May's history. She learned about the woman who had given birth to her, her intelligence, her kindness, her dedication to stories and truth. "She would have loved knowing you became a teacher," Thomas said at one point, "that you help children find their voices." Later, as the evening grew late, Lily showed May her room, proudly displaying her collection of notebooks filled with stories. "These are your legacy too," May told her. "Your grandmother's gift passed down through both of us." As May prepared to leave, Thomas handed her a small wrapped package. "This was my mother's," he explained. "I think she would want you to have it." At home, May carefully unwrapped the package to find a silver pen engraved with Eleanor's initials. A note in Thomas's handwriting read simply, "The story continues." She sat at her desk and began to write, words flowing as if they had been waiting a lifetime to be set free. She wrote about a woman who lost a child and a child who never knew what she was missing, about a young girl at a marble tomb, keeping memories alive through stories, about threads that connect across time and space. weaving patterns we can only understand when we step back far enough to see the whole tapestry. In the months that followed, May became a fixture in Thomas and Lily's life. She helped Lily develop her writing, encouraged Thomas to share his own memories of Eleanor, and slowly pieced together the history of the family she had never known she had. Together, they completed Eleanor's manuscript, filling in the ending she had never lived to write, the story of a daughter who found her way home through an unlikely encounter at a cemetery, guided by a child who carried her grandmother's gift for storytelling. When the book was published the following year, they dedicated it to Eleanor Grace Williams, whose search had finally ended in the most unexpected and beautiful way. The dedication read simply, "For Eleanor, who taught us that stories, like love, find their way home in the end." And on the first Thursday of every month, they still visited the cemetery together, placing flowers on both Eleanor's tomb and the grave of the woman who had raised May with so much love. Two mothers, one daughter, and the remarkable threads that had connected them all